Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you so much. And friends and family and honored guests who are here today, I'm profoundly grateful to have been chosen as Senate President Pro Tem once again for a fifth term. The only greater honor that I've ever received is when my wife Ellen said yes to my proposal of marriage about 42 years ago. She has been the light of my life for that entire time. Joined here also by our son Michael, who after attending Yale and MIT,
Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you, Martin M. Looney, solemnly swear that you will serve under the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Connecticut for as long as you remain a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge, according to the law, the duties of the office of Senate President Pro Tempore of the Connecticut State Senate to the best of your abilities, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations.
Senator, President, the Senate is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you so much. And friends and family and honored guests who are here today, I'm profoundly grateful to have been chosen as Senate President Pro Tem once again for a fifth term. The only greater honor that I've ever received is when my wife Ellen said yes to my proposal of marriage about 42 years ago. She has been the light of my life for that entire time. Joined here also by our son Michael, who after attending Yale and MIT, spent about 12 years as a private planner for a private planning and engineering firm, but really wanted to get into public service and has for the last 8 years worked for the city of Hartford, first as the project director to bring the Dunkin' Donuts Stadium to completion, and more recently as public works director for the city of Hartford. He makes me proud every single day, and I can also say that I can get a pothole fixed faster in Hartford than I can in New Haven. I wanted to thank Judge Fisher, my dear friend, for administering the oath of office, and I can literally say without him I would not be here. He gave me renewed life and health 6 years ago when he donated to me a healthy kidney. I also want to thank his wife, Katie Fisher, who was so supportive of that decision and was helpful to Brian in that entire process. Also wanted to acknowledge my dear friend and law partner for 37 years, Jack Keyes, a recently retired probate judge of the city of New Haven. Jack has been wonderfully supportive and helpful during all of my absences from the office during all of those years when I'm gone for weeks at a time during the session. There were a couple of times where I thought my office furniture would be sold when I came back, but fortunately that has not happened. Jack also deserves an assist on the kidney transplant because he had been a dear friend of Judge Fisher, and I became a friend of Judge Fisher through Jack. So both of them are former basketball players, although look at Jack, you wouldn't realize that, but Judge Fisher was a star basketball player in high school, so while he hit the three-point shot at the buzzer, Jack gets the assist on that as well, and I'm deeply grateful to both of them. Also we have at present my dear friend Bill Menil, with whom I grew up. We've been friends since childhood in the Fairhaven section of New Haven. He was one of the, along with his wife and my mother, they were about my entire campaign team in my first run for public office back in the 1970s. And my dear friend Nick Neely and his wife Sue Weisselberg are here. Nick has been the manager of all of my state Senate campaigns, so Nick has a record of 16-0 as a campaign manager in state Senate races. So again, thank you so much. But Looking around the circle, there are now only 12 of us being sworn in today who also took that oath in 2015 when I first became Senate President Pro Tem. Senator Fonfara, Senator Kissel, Senator Winfield, me, Senator Hartley, Senator Austin, Senator Kelly, Senator Moore, our Majority Leader, Senator Duff, Senator Huang, Senator Flexer, Senator Martin. There were 16 members who were elected in either 17, who took office in 17, 19, or 21, and 8 new senators taking the oath of office today. So, however, regardless of the length of service, we share a sense of commitment and of gratitude to those who placed their faith in us and voted to send us here, to the dedicated volunteers who believed in us enough to work so hard on our behalf and our campaigns, and especially to our families who've accommodated their lives to our crazy and intrusive schedules. In 2021, the 28 of us who returned and our 8 former colleagues took the oath of office on January 6th in the freezing cold Capitol parking lot in a bitter wind. The only benefit to that was that the weather did keep the speeches very short that day. And also a special note of thanks that the most impressive staff work that day was done by Courtney Cullinan, who got hand warmers for all of us, and that was probably the most valuable assistance that anyone could give under those conditions. And that afternoon, we returned home after that ceremony to witness the attempt of a defeated president and some of his supporters to destroy our democratic system, which has for over 200 years been a light to the world, by seeking to overturn the results of a fair and free election. The hopes of fledgling and aspirational democracies took a blow that day. But fortunately, we in Connecticut were not thrown off the rails by that appalling event and went on to have a highly productive term in 2021 and 2022. I was going to, at this point, talk about all of the events going back to the 1981 session when I was first sworn in. I was going to give a couple of minutes each of the 2 years, but Vinnie Morrow told me that the chamber would be empty before I got out of the 1980s, so we're not going to do that. But again, we had a highly successful term with a balanced budget, with putting our rainy day fund to the maximum limit of 15%, substantial payments, unprecedented payments to our pension funds, which had long been neglected. So we have had that, plus the fact that it has been enabled us to do a number of things to meet the crisis of the pandemic, one of which was to suspend the gasoline tax for a full 9 months and to provide for free bus service during that crisis time as well. We created a new $250 per child tax credit using ARPA funds. We hope to continue that into the future. Extended the earned income tax credit to a level of 40% of the federal credit. We provided tax relief to owners of cars by capping the tax on motor vehicles. That's going to save about $100 million a year and will also benefit residents in more than 45% of our communities and substantially more than half of our population. Increase the property tax credit on the income tax and increase the earned income tax, as I said, to 40% of the federal credit. And again, we have made substantial contributions to what had been a crisis in our pension funds. In terms of policy, we recognize that during the pandemic, many social problems that had pre-existed became actually worse, and one of which was a crisis with our children, especially young children, especially those who are most in need. And last year, we made a significant advancement in that area, providing funds to impact the mental health crisis in children, expanded services for people with substance abuse, and gave a long overdue increase to the people working in nonprofits who provide so many services on behalf of state agencies, increased funds to support survivors of domestic violence, more funds for community college tuition, job training programs, and a historic investment in child care services and preschool programs, which we need to try to find to continue. In addition to that, we added substantially to the funding for Meals on Wheels and for Alzheimer's care programs. So in this new term, we must make even a more urgent commitment to meet the mental health needs of children who since the pandemic face long waits for treatment at places like the Yale Child Study Center in New Haven. We must improve Medicaid and insurance reimbursements for children's mental health to encourage more providers to take on these children. We find in many cases children are unable to find mental health services outside of what they're able to get through the school systems. And in many cases, what's provided there is not adequate in cases where the need is severe. We must create more affordable housing through a combination of mandates and incentives, especially in communities who have failed to recognize that over the years that we are one Connecticut. We must expand our commitment also to municipal aid, recognizing that it's the local property tax rather than any tax directly levied by the state that people find the most burdensome. We have to provide more incentives for regional cooperation and the creation of more regional service districts in order to achieve economies of scale and promote regional economic planning to transcend the hyper-localism that has proved both inefficient and excessively costly to us over the years. We must, in the words of the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. We have to do it in a way that leads to consensus building rather than anger and a scorched earth policy. We must proceed in a spirit of hope and confidence, remembering, as the great Czech playwright and statesman Václav Havel said, hope is a condition of the soul rather than a response to circumstances. So we have to orient ourselves toward hope, even at times when things may seem bleak. We have to recognize that eternal fire of hope needs to keep burning, and we need to keep nurturing it. Finally, we should embrace the future with a generous and open-hearted spirit. We must reject the fear of the future that so often leads to anger and the search for scapegoats. Indeed, we should embrace the approach urged by Senator Robert F. Kennedy, who said, "There are people in every time and every land who want to stop history in its tracks. They fear the future, mistrust the present, and invoke the security of a comfortable past which in fact never existed." So thank you again to my caucus, my colleagues, my friends, my family, for the continued opportunity to serve. And as my mother often said, don't just stand there, make yourself useful. And thank you all so much.